Hello. Today we are doing my first quarter ARC ranking, so ranking all of the advanced reader copies, or ARCs, that I received that came out or will come out in the first quarter of 2021. There are 16 of them, and if you don't know, if you've not been following me or whatever, I always at the end of each quarter like to go through and do a ranking of all of the advanced reader copies I have gotten for that quarter, because I do feel like one part of being a good steward of having the opportunity to read books in advance is to make sure that I, in a focused or concentrated way, give you guys my thoughts about those books. I do talk about these in my monthly wrap-ups, so you hear about them there, and then obviously if I love them, you hear about them a lot more. I think that this is a way for me to feel comfortable. I am fulfilling my obligation that I have taken on by accepting an advanced reader copy that I've requested, and also it's just fun for me. I enjoy torturing myself by forcing myself to rank things. That's like my kink. I don't know. So anyway, like I said, I did read 16 books that came out or will come out in the first quarter of 2021, and on average, my rating for them was 3.71875. So a very high average so far, which makes sense because I'm looking and I've already got, let's see, 3 in the first quarter that I gave 4.5 stars to. So we're doing good. 2 more housekeeping notes before we dive into this. One, if you are not familiar with my rating scale, for me, a 3-star is a B, and I would define that as it has met my expectations. It did what I was hoping it would do, didn't do it particularly amazingly, nor did it let me down. Like, it was just, did what it was supposed to do. Then in contrast to that, I use 4.5 and 5-star to denote favorites of the year. So 4.5 star is a favorite book of the year, and a 5-star is an all-time favorite. So I don't give out a ton of 4.5 and 5 stars usually, just to give you a sense of like what ratings mean to me. And then the last thing is just that I do tend, in terms of like things that I tend to read front list on, and therefore things that I tend to get ARCs for, I tend to read a lot of mystery, sci-fi, fantasy, and romance as front list. I do an occasional nonfiction pick as front list ARC. I tend to like those more in audio form, so often I'll wait and get an audiobook rather than reading it as an ARC. But anyway, just so you know the kinds of books that are likely to show up here. All that to say, enough of my yapping. I feel like I've been talking a very long time. Let's just get into the meat and potatoes of this video, and we will start at the bottom and work our way up. Number 16 is definitely a disappointment, and that is A History of What Comes Next by Sylvain Neuvel. I gave this 2.5 stars because this book is a book for someone. It just wasn't for me. And really my issue with this book was the writing style. Now, I have enjoyed Sylvain Neuvel's other writing, and I will try more from him in the future because I think he has a lot of interesting ideas as a writer. And the idea of this series is really cool. It's basically these aliens who have infiltrated Earth. It's historical sci-fi, I should say. And they are mother-daughter pairings who are trying to help humanity achieve space flight, and that is like their mission that they pass on across the generations. The issue I had with this book was the writing style. It just was very dialogue heavy in a very stylized, stilted manner, and it just didn't connect with me. I think other people may like it better, and this is one where I'd recommend get a couple of sample chapters. If you like the writing, I think you will probably like the book. I did not like the writing style, therefore I did not really enjoy the book, but your mileage may vary. For me, it varied to not loving it. Number 15 is The Conductors by Nicole Glover, and this is definitely disappointing because I frankly went into this book expecting it to be like a 4 or 5-star read. The premise is super cool and has a lot of elements that I really enjoy. So basically it is an alternative version of American history post-Civil War, and our main characters Hetty and Benji? Yeah, Hetty and Benji are a married couple who are Black. During the pre-Civil War times, they were successful Underground Railroad conductors. They escaped slavery and then they helped other enslaved peoples escape. And they have magic. Like, it's fantasy, and there's these different kinds of magic. The kind of magic that Black Americans use and are allowed to use is based on like working with constellations, and then they also are solving mysteries. So like all of those are such cool elements. I sadly felt, I believe this is a debut novel, and I kind of just ended up feeling that. I think the way that this novel ultimately got kind of pieced together, I didn't really think fully cohered. There were definitely elements in this I really liked, and as you can tell even just from the setup is wicked cool. So I would try more from this author. I just think for this debut, the pacing was really off for me, and I just didn't feel like the murder mystery piece of it came together as strong as I wanted it to. I don't know. There was just something a little bit off, but still like a solid read. Not terrible, just not as good as I hoped it might be. And then from here on out, we have at least the 3.5 star or higher, which is like a B+ or higher. So here we go. A Lady's Formula for Love by Elizabeth Everett. I just thought was like a really fun, smart version of a historical romance. It's got a woman in STEM. It's got a bodyguard and the guardie coming together. And I think if you like kind of a different take on historical, something that has a little bit of a different sort of perspective than we saw in traditional sort of like Georgette Heyer versions of romance, I think people will get into this. It's not like the best historical romance I've ever read, but I thought it was like, there was something slightly special about it. I thought the writing was really nice. The characters were really lovable. Yeah, I think if you are into the premise of this one is definitely like worth giving a try. Number 13 is Down Comes the Night by Alison Saft. And this is a book that probably in terms of its objective quality, I probably should have given a lower rating to, but this was just so much my jam. I had to give it a 3.5 because I just had fun with it. It is basically a version of an isolated closed circle mystery, which is like everybody's trapped together, people are dying, you got to figure out who done it. It's got a flavor of that. It's not quite that trope, but it is like an isolation mystery thriller kind of setup in terms of most of what's happening in the plot, but it's set in a fantasy world. It's got our main character is the bastard daughter of princess of the ruling family from the country she comes from, and she like is kind of being outcast by her aunt for reasons. So there's like political machination things happening, and she's like this gifted healer, and she's trying to heal the people who are being poisoned in this remote, castle thing. She's trying to save them, and also there's like a cute boy she's falling in love with. So for like YA fantasy mystery romance, I had fun with this. I think it's kind of soapy. It's just kind of fun. I wouldn't say it's like the best thing I've ever read, but I personally just had like a really fun time with it. So I enjoyed it. Number 12 is The Project from Courtney Summers. Now this book is one that I think objectively in terms of its quality is probably actually, I rated it a little low because I think in terms of objective quality, it is very high. Like Courtney Summers writes things that are sold as YA, but I'm telling you, I don't feel like they're actually YA. I feel like they're new adult, whatever that means. They're young protagonists, but they are not actually teenagers. And I don't think that they're like thematically really doing what YA tends to do, which is often like finding your place in the world. I don't think that her books are quite that, at least the ones I've read. However, they're incredibly well written. They're very dark, so like I definitely give the warning in terms of like these are thrillers that go there. So like this particular one, I would give warnings for like sexual abuse and like spiritual abuse and cults and self-harm stuff, like all the things, all the content warning. And it did ultimately have one of its core twists in terms of how it was playing with timeline was something that did not work for me, but I think for other people who like those tropes better, they would like it better than I did. But basically the setup for this is our main character is the younger sister in this pair of sisters. Their parents have died, and in their youth, they got swept up into this cult. Our main character seems to have gotten out of it, and her older sister seems to still be in it, and she is working for a newspaper and trying to investigate a potential killing related to the cult. So if you like investigative journalism trope, if you like a cult trope, it really worked for me on those levels, and I do think it's really good. Very interesting thematically. It didn't totally work for me just in terms of my own personal preferences, but I think it was really well done. All that to say. Number 11 is Love at First by Kate Clayborn. Now, Kate Clayborn is such an interesting author. I haven't talked about this book yet on camera, so you're probably gonna get a couple of like me groping towards my thoughts about Kate Clayborn. Her writing is very high quality. Like she has a very distinctive style, and it's she's going for sort of like a more literary prose style in her rom-coms. So they're rom-coms that have this sort of tone of a more kind of women's fiction-y type book, but the plots are not women's fiction, the writing is. So it's just an interesting kind of mix-up or like mashing together of style and plot beats. It's really interesting. I've never read someone quite like Kate Clayborn. I found this with both of the two books I've read from her. So I definitely enjoyed this. It's not like my favorite rom-com I've ever read, but I did actually like this even better than the first book I read from her, which was called Love Lettering. I like this one even better. The premise is this woman, Nora, she lives in this apartment complex where her grandmother has lived her whole life, and she basically has like this really intense found family within this apartment complex. Her grandmother's died and she's like mourning that, and then one of the other residents of the apartment building passes away and he leaves his apartment to his nephew. This is all in Chicago, and his nephew wants to use the apartment as sort of like an Airbnb weekend rental kind of thing, and the rest of the building really doesn't want him to do that. So it's sort of a hate, like a enemies to love kind of thing, in terms of like she's trying to like thwart his attempts to do that. She doesn't know, however, that he heard her voice when he was visiting his uncle at like 16 and instantly fell in love with her. And so like it's a whole thing about like, this really is a book a lot about grief. But anyway, I think it's a really interesting version of a rom-com. I don't know that it like totally got me there in terms of the romance piece of it, but I thought it was really well executed. I think it really dealt with like grief and ideas of found family very nicely. So this was a really thought-provoking, different kind of romance for me. Number 10 is Quiet in Her Bones by Nalini Singh, which is a small community thriller. And I didn't like this one quite as much as her first thriller, which was called A Madness of Sunshine. Again, purely based on the tropes. A lot of these 3.5 ones, actually, now that I'm looking at this, they're quality-wise probably closer to a 4-star, but there was something in the trope combo that wasn't my favorite. And that's the case with this one, just because our narrator, there's a lot of ambiguity in terms of like his reliability, and the mechanism by which that is done is not one of my favorites. So it's not that it's badly done, it's just personally not a favorite of mine. And I do really want to continue reading Nalini Singh thrillers though, because I think her character work, as with all of her books, is always just so wonderful. I love her sci-fi romances. Wonderful. I really, really enjoy them. And because she comes from the world of romance, she's really good at writing character development and motivations. Romance tends to be I've seen a lot of romance authors successfully making the transition from romance to mystery or thriller in the last few years. And I think it's because they're both genres. Well, romance has to be character driven. And I think mystery thriller can really benefit from writers who have that skill set. And I think she is definitely successfully making the transition of adding that into what she does. I think that this is a great book if you like secrets from the past, if you like an unreliable narrator, if you like it's all about this like small community, like a small neighborhood and all the people who live there in New Zealand. And our main character's mom went missing years and years ago, and we open the book with them finally finding her body. We find out like what a piece of shit his dad is, and just like all of the secrets that went down back when she first went missing and how that has impacted our main character's life. So it's really, really good. And I am very much looking forward to the next thriller she puts out, because I just think I do really enjoy the way she does those. Number 9 is The Bachelor, Cowboy by Jessica Clare. And this is one where I just have not read a small town romance in a really long time. And I just really enjoyed my time with Jessica Clare's version of a bachelor auction in a small town, which is a trope I very much enjoy. Jessica Clare writes under a few other pen names. I very much enjoy pretty much all of the work she does under all of those different pen names. Her sense of humor really works for me. Her character development also tends to work really well for me. In her contemporary, she has a lot of awkward main characters, and I think she executes that in a way that's really believable and endearing, at least to me. The main conflict in this one is that our heroine's mother is a narcissist, and she's basically been like traumatized from that, and she's trying to like move on from her mom being so controlling. She buys our hero at a bachelor auction. He is a smoking hot cowboy, and he is like he's just really into her. He's had his eye on her for a while, but he thought she was like scared of him, so he hadn't been pursuing her. And once she kind of, opens the door for her being interested in him, he's like, cool, let's do this. So I just thought this was really sweet, really fun. It made me smile. It did what I like a small town contemporary romance to do. And then number 8 and the top of our 3.5s is Fireheart Tiger by Elliot de Bodard. This was my first first book from Aliette de Bodard that I've read, or I guess it's a novella, and I really enjoyed her world building. So the setup for this one is a princess who is sort of one of the main diplomats for her mother, who is the queen. The setting, it seems to be sort of like Southeast Asian inspired. It's a fantasy world, and it's all these different matriarchies, and this princess from a neighboring and sort of like dominant country has come, and they're on like this diplomatic mission. Our princess and that princess had a past romantic relationship that's coming back up and like causing some drama. And basically I thought what was so compelling about this book is that Aliette de Bodard is mapping traditionally male-female gender dynamics onto a sapphic relationship and thereby commenting kind of on both. And I thought that was really, really well done. This is one that I think that could have benefited from being a little bit longer. Like, I think if this had been maybe 50% longer, it would have been even better. But I'm very intrigued to read more from this author just based on the quality of the writing and how interesting the world building in this was. Like, I'm definitely intrigued to continue on with her. Number 7, speaking of fantasy-ish authors that I would be intrigued to read more from, is The Burning Girls and Other Stories by Veronica Chenoz. This is a collection of speculative short stories. They all tend to be very influenced by feminism and Jewish folk stories that get translated into magic. And I don't know that I can tell you a whole lot more beyond that other than there's a lot of very experimental stories in this collection. So there are some hits and some misses. So it's not perfectly even in its execution, but I think that there is a lot of really interesting ideas in this one, and also some really interesting world building or like kind of premises that she sets up. So I would definitely read another collection from this author. I was very like intrigued by what I read. Number 6 is Across the Green Grass Fields by Shauna Maguire, which is, I believe, number 6 also in the Wayward Children series. And this one is basically a portal fantasy for horse girls because the fantasy world we go to is called the Hooflands, which is adorable. There are unicorns, there are centaurs, and shenanigans ensue, always with the very sharp and pointed kind of social commentary that Shauna Maguire bakes into her stories. This one really, really worked for me. It's probably, I would say it's maybe in my top 3 of favorites from the Wayward Children series. I really, really like this one. I sometimes have pacing issues with her, and this did not have that for me. Like, I was totally engaged throughout, and I felt like there was no unnecessary side bits, which sometimes I think these short novellas have, and I'm like, you don't have a lot of pages. Anyway, side note, this one didn't have that problem. Also, our main character is intersex, which you don't see every day, so I appreciated having kind of like a different main character to follow. And yeah, overall, this was a really good one. Number 5 is The Girl from Shadow Springs by Ellie Cipher. I believe this is a debut YA fantasy. And this one was just like the perfect winter read. It's in this, basically, it's a reimagining of sort of like a Snow Queen or like Ice Queen folktale, but in a Western world, like a Western dystopic world. So it's like snowy AF. Our main character is an orphan. It's just her and her sister, and they're trying to survive in this like hellhole Western frontier type town. And these awful snows, she like scavenges for stuff, and she basically accidentally scavenges something she shouldn't have. Her sister gets taken, and she meets this boy whose uncle has died on this quest, and they are gonna go on a road trip to try to save her sister and to like get answers. And it's just really satisfying. I thought that this was really well done. The writing, I think like the actual prose quality of this is really high, and it just really hit the spot for me in terms of just like, ooh, like it's cold outside, and this just like felt nice and wintry and cozy to read. So yeah, I would definitely read more from this author, and I do just really love a YA fantasy Western. It works for me. Number 4 is The Burning Girls from CJ Tudor, which is an adult thriller, and this one was just like such page-turning goodness for me. The setup is a lady vicar and her daughter are sent to this new assignment in Sussex, to this church where the previous vicar committed suicide. There's also a history in this town of these Protestant martyrs and these little girls who were part of that, who were burned under Queen Mary, and they are said to haunt this chapel. So there's that happening. She's trying to find out like why this other guy committed suicide and like secrets from the past. So you have like secrets from the past, small town secrets, like all this different like religious secret stuff. So like just trope wise, this one really worked for me. The last twist in this one one is not my favorite, and it did slightly ding it down for me, but I just thought this was like page turning fun. I have not read something from CJ Tudor before. I definitely will read something else from her because I like the writing stuff. For the most part, I had a really good time in this one. So I'm gonna read more from this author, and I think if this is your kind of thriller, you will not be disappointed. Content warnings for sexual abuse and religious abuse, or like spiritual abuse in this one for sure. It's like a mystery around a church. That's probably not a surprise, but just FYI, you should definitely have that content warning. And then we hit my top 3, and these are all 4.5 stars, and they're all really good. Okay, so number 3 is Every Last Fear from Alex Finlay. This is a book that, like, in my heart, I don't want to like it as much as I do. I don't know why. Like, as I was reading it, I almost felt resentful that I was enjoying it as much, because there is something in the kind of authorial voice that it has that does remind me of sort of like dude bro thriller kind of vibe. And I can't really give you it's just the vibe of this. I'm not, like, I liked it against my will, basically, but it's just, I think, a really, really satisfying page turner of a thriller. The setup is this family's oldest son was convicted of murder of his high school girlfriend. There's sort of like a Making a Murderer type docuseries on Netflix that throws his guilt into question, and they are basically like spending a lot of their time and resources trying to prove that he's innocent, except for the second oldest son, who goes to NYU for school and just sort of wants to forget it all happened. He just wants to move on with his life. The rest of the family goes on vacation to Mexico, and they are all killed in what looks like an accident. And from there, we start to find out more about what happened to the oldest son. Did he really commit that original murder? And was it really an accident, or was the rest of the family killed? It is page turning. It is really fun. I will give you a warning that I wish this had not been set in Mexico at all, because I think the portrayal of Mexican people in this story is just very facile and not like copacetic, basically. I wish that this had just been in like a resort somewhere in like the Florida Keys or something. I just think it didn't have to be there, and it adds a layer of annoyance to me. So just FYI there as well. But if you're looking for like a really satisfying page turning book with like kind of a true crime angle to it, and I honestly just like a really not put downable kind of thriller, I think that you'll enjoy this one. And it does have sort of the conspiracy element. You can see the red string here. Yeah, it is a really good thriller. I think it worked for me. Number 2 is Highland Treasure from Lindsay Sands. Look at that glistening man titty and how gigantic it is next to my head. I ordered this in hardback because this is my second favorite in her Highlander series. This is with Rory, who is the doctor of our hot dumb Highlander brothers, who are all slowly getting married off, the Buchanan brothers. You could read this as a standalone. It's sort of like they're on the run from somebody who's trying to kill the heroine for like inheritance kind of reasons. And it's sort of like hot dumb fun in the Scottish locks. I think that the character development in this one is better than pretty much any other Lindsay Sands book I've read. I'd say like objectively, this is one of the highest quality books she's written. And if you just like a fun Highlander romance, I think you'll enjoy this. I know that I did. And then number 1 is not a surprise. It's Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the 3rd book in the Brown Sisters trilogy, which I absolutely love. I really enjoyed all 3 of them. I would say the second one, Take a Hint, Dana Brown, is definitely my favorite, but this one is also really good. It's sort of like a grump sunshine kind of trope. Our hero is autistic. Our heroine is kind of discovering that she may also be on the spectrum, and they're working at a little inn together and falling in love. And it's very funny and very charming. And I just loved it because Talia Hibbert's Brown Sisters trilogy can just do very little wrong in my eyes. So there you go. That one's number 1, at least for right now. So those are my forced rankings of the arcs that I read for Q1 2021. You will get 2 or 3 more videos like this throughout the year from me, and I will continue to force rank. And I have I've already read books for Q2 that I'm excited to talk to you guys about. So look forward to that. Let me know what your favorite 2021 release so far has been down in the comments below, or what you thought of any of the books I talked about. And yeah, I think that will do it for me. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!